Another thing that kind of concerned me is it seems like, this is my interpretation, that the G3 executive team had the idea of involving them equals a sin.
Mm-hmm.
But Michael O'Fallon is a member, he's a board member of G3,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore reflects on the organization.
Right.
And if it's been 2 years of Costi trying to work things out with
Mm-hmm.
Michael O'Fallon, and it hasn't happened, again, this is where we don't have the details, and this is where their statement does not clarify what's going on.
Yeah.
It's very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do they know that there's a conflict? Like, for 2 years? If they did know, had they tried to be peacemakers, or had they just let it go?
Mm-hmm.
Are they familiar with Michael O'Fallon, like propping up false teachers and an atheist for the church? Are they familiar with those things?
And that's where the statement is very frustrating for me to read. The statement puts all the blame on Costi for what he did, but there's no clarification as to what the actual truth is about the accusations he made in the podcast. Mm-hmm. If they had come out and said, oh, well, Michael O'Fallon is not on our board, that would make a lot more sense, right?
But their website has him as a board member, which, by the way, thank you, G3, for publicly, putting on your website who your board members are. Many Christian organizations will not even do that. So kudos to where it's due.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's just so many questions that were brought up by Costi's points that he made in his podcast that have not been addressed whatsoever.
No, a statement.
Nothing.
And I know they put out a statement. They even say in the statement, this is meant to clarify. And I'm like, well, I appreciate the effort, but I think there's going to be additional clarification necessary.
For sure.
Involving somebody actually isn't a sin.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to be involved. They might have been upset that they were involved. It's okay to be upset. But clearly, G3 is a part of how Costi and Michael O'Fallon interacted with each other. Therefore, they are the context for the conflict. And it makes sense that they be mentioned at least. And if there's something that he said that was wrong, I would like to know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put that in the light. I think that'd be really good.
Yeah. Also, nothing has been addressed about Michael O'Fallon slandering Costi.
Oh, with the whole grifter comment?
No. In the podcast, Costi was saying that Michael O'Fallon has been slandering him and his ministry behind his back. And when, Costi went to him to try to figure that out, they couldn't come to an agreement about anything.
Yeah.
There was no resolution. So why is that not being dealt with? A board member of G3 is slandering people behind their back, and that's not being dealt with?
Or is that not true?
Right.
And I think we need to know. To be able to trust what G3 is doing, we need to know.
Yeah. There's just been no clarification.
Yeah. Also, they refer to what Costi did as slander. In my mind, slander is the intent to do harm. Mm-hmm. That's my understanding of the word. I didn't get that sense. He might have been wrong, but it seemed like if he's wrong, he's honestly wrong.
Yeah.
And, he did make one clarification, because in his podcast, he had said that Michael O'Fallon was a board member of Alpha and Omega Ministries with James White. It seems as though that is not the case. So there's a detail. Okay, there's one detail that's wrong. That was clear. Mm-hmm. Great. There's a difference between having details wrong, and of course, when you make an accusation, you should do the due diligence of having your details be as accurate as possible. Mm-hmm. But make your clarifications as soon as you find out, which so far Costi seems to have done, at least with Alpha and Omega Ministries. But with this, we have no idea. So was there actually slander? It doesn't seem like slander. Mm-hmm. But again, we don't know. And so that's a frustrating thing about this statement.
Yeah. He also says that he needs to have more of the meekness of Christ and that true strength is strength under control. But again, I would just say Christ is our perfect example of meekness and true strength and maturity. And yet he was overturning tables at times. He was calling people harsh names and calling out their false teachings. That's all meekness.
Was Paul out of control when he said that he wished the Judaizers would emasculate themselves? Was he out of control? We would say that, like, oh, that's rough language. But I don't think so. I really don't. One more sentence here that I thought was really interesting. Costi says, I was blinded by personal frustrations and conflict and thus pursued justice rather than following the biblical pattern given to preserve unity, which is sinful. If you're following the biblical pattern, it leads to justice.
And you can't have biblical unity when it's not around the truth.
Yeah. Unity is you're unified around Jesus, truly around Jesus, which includes confessing your sins. So it just, like, to me, the fact that there's like this dichotomy between justice and biblical pattern makes me think that his understanding of the biblical pattern has been distorted. And I think whoever's in his circles, we'll find out long term if they're actually true friends that are just misguided or if they are not true friends at all. But whoever's giving him advice, it's not good. Following the biblical pattern leads to justice.
Yeah. I mean, the fruit of all of this is that he's been silenced. Sadly, the light that was being shed on hypocrisy in the church, there's a bushel over it now. And I think that's really sad. And I don't think that is biblical fruit. That is not the fruit of a biblical pattern.
No.
So I'm saddened by that. I hope that time will reveal more and maybe bring clarity to the situation. I would really appreciate more clarity from G3 specifically. But yeah.
It's sad, but our hope is Jesus, right? And the last day, everything will be exposed. And that's what our hope is.
Yeah.
There will be nothing hidden, not a single word. Everything will be revealed.
Yeah.
So we're going to be okay. We're going to be good. Everything comes to light eventually, even if it's on the final day.